on the button. I mean, I won't just disappear mid-sentence, but I've got a comfortable hour anyway.
We'll aim to get you out before 5. It's
No
not like a
worries. No
doctor's
worries.
where it's like the time is different. Say come for an hour, you're going to be there 3 hours. No worries. All right, in that case, we'll get started and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Graham. It's very nice to be here. In our little pre podcast chat, I didn't even ask whereabouts you are. You're in the States?
Yeah, so I'm currently based in New Jersey because I work over in New York. So I just
Oh,
travel
okay.
over, but I only moved here about a year ago. So
Oh, okay. Wow, big change, I'm sure.
yeah, it was a bit of a different one. Still trying to get used to some aspects. So I'm originally from like East Coast of England, so
Yeah, yeah.
um, flown over. But you're based out in Belfast, is it?
I am indeed. Yeah, I'm like 10 minutes outside Belfast, slightly in the sticks, because 10 minutes distance here can take you to a different world. It's a small place.
That's fine. Is that you always been out near the city or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've lived. Have I ever lived in the city centre? I've lived sort of almost in the city before, but usually I've been out kind of a little bit at a bit of a remove. But as I say, I'm only 10 minutes away from it, so it's not that far. But yeah, no, I've been living in and around Belfast all my life, and yeah, that's what goes on.
Nice, nice. I've never, even though I was in the UK prior, 30 odd years, I never made it to Ireland. Like,
Hey
just
man, there's still time. You're a young dude.
I always feel bad. Like I like I went to Scotland and like touched over onto Wales, but I never made it over to Ireland. It's right
Uh,
there. Like it's literally
Scotland's
right.
probably more fun anyway. I like Scotland a lot. I don't mean that if anyone from Belfast is watching or listening, but I do like Scotland a lot. Yeah, can't wait to go back.
All right, well, we're gonna start with like an easy question, potentially, but also kind of
Okay.
therapeutic. Who are you?
So my name is Peter, and I also go under the name Alpha Chrome Yayo. I'm a musician from Belfast, like we just said, and I always find it hard to describe exactly what my music is like. So I've gone with the catch-all term of far-out exciting music, which hopefully sums it up and doesn't sound too wanky. But yeah, basically, I make music and I make albums and release them myself, and it ranges from sort of jazz fusion and city pop type stuff to kind of ethereal, liminal, ambient, and new age. And there's usually a smattering of very raunchy, horny robots involved too at some point in most of my releases. So I do that, and I also make music for short films and long films, and I'm currently working on a couple of video game soundtracks. So yeah, I'm a music man is the short answer.
I like that you struggle to describe your own music because I was trying to think prior to the call how to describe your music. Because I was
Yeah,
sort of thinking
I
like,
don't blame
how
you.
did yeah, like how did I find it? It was like, well, I was on Twitter and I saw this some stuff, and then I saw some videos, and at first I thought you were just remixing videos over the top of music. I didn't realize you were
Sure,
like
sure.
responsible for everything when I first saw it. But at the same time, I was like, but I still don't know how I would describe the music I was hearing because it's like there's a level of lo-fi to it, and there's like yeah, but it's like techno, and then there's just stuff just like
Yeah,
there,
there's lots
but it
of
all
stuff.
works.
Oh man, that's very kind of you to say. I mean, my very favorite thing is when somebody says, "Yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, but it just sounds like you," and that's a lovely thing for me to hear. Um, yeah, I mean, sometimes I get kind of lumped in with synthwave or vaporwave, and that's lovely. I like if anyone enjoys any kind of genre of music and sees me as being part of that. That's great. But I also don't really like kind of genre conventions and bit sticking to one thing. I'm just a very fickle man. Is the thing. I like finding weird wormholes and exploring those holes.
I think it was something which I kind of relate to when I saw your stuff was that you don't seem to stick to one thing. You seem to fit what you're making to the thing you're making, and I don't know
Yeah,
if that's the right way around you do it. Like,
yeah, I think it often is. I mean, because I do a lot of sort of stuff that's kind of like commissioned sometimes for like I've done jingles for podcasts and YouTube channels and scored sort of films and stuff like I was saying, and that always has to kind of fit a remit, and that's kind of fun. If somebody says, I need some like noir jazz or something, how do you make it sound like an old cop movie? I like thinking about that first and going, right, well, how can I make it sound like that? But when I'm doing my own stuff, there's the extra freedom to kind of do that, but then also break all the rules as well and make it sound kind of even more strange or unusual, And like a lot of the music I listen to, well, I mean, everyone listens to lots of music, but there's a band called Psy. They're kind of an avant-garde Japanese black metal band. I started listening when I was about 15, and I love that they kind of will do like a black metal track, which kind of sort of segues into disco and jazz and stuff, even within the same song. I like that, I like sort of the Frank Zappa school of thought, where you're kind of not necessarily sticking to one thing and making music sometimes that can be inherently silly, but taking it very seriously at the same time. Even if I'm writing songs that are about, the peculiarities of Japanese train lines or stuff like that. It's fun to sort of explore those sort of different sort of worlds. Just throw yourself head first into it. That's something I've always liked, whether it's music or just stuff I'm enjoying.
So a sheer level of committing yourself to silly is it's the way you're approaching it in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot. I just think that's fun. I've always been the kind of guy who gets obsessed with things quite quickly. I don't know about yourself, but if I find something I love, I like to explore it and learn everything I can about it. And then if it's something musical, maybe see how I can make that my own in a weird way, or just listen to things and I just like I like world building. I guess I like sort of D&D, tabletop games, and video games and stuff. I just like, no matter what the sort of format is, people who create sort of worlds to explore. And if I can touch on that in any small way with my music, I'm very happy.
Okay, I think what I noticed was you seem to trying to think of the way to describe it was you seem to make something from nothing, if that makes sense. So like you
Yeah.
kind of take something and like seeing the stuff you do with CRT and like expanding with like various analog technologies and then plugging that to various different things, plugging in remotes. And it's just like, yeah, you very much like you've you've dove into what's out there and then
Yeah.
taken that to make what you want. But part of it's just the play of doing it in the first place.
Dude, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that sort of sums up my whole life, basically. It's just what I
Well
love
done.
doing. Um, I like having a blank slate to start with, and I try not to copy people ever, but I certainly, take lots of influence from all around the world and from different formats and stuff. But yeah, having that blank slate to start with is always lovely. I've never been the kind of guy who gets intimidated by a blank page. I get more intimidated by a page that's full of stuff and I don't know what to do with it.
makes, yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I mean, this is a nice little segue. You mentioned Japanese trains and stuff. Where does the Japanese influence come from?
Well, it's large. There's a lot of Japanese influence in my music for anyone who doesn't know. Um, there's lots of music from all around the world. I mean, there's lots of sort of Icelandic stuff by fold in, even Italo disco and stuff. But you're quite right. There's a huge Japanese influence, and largely that is due to both the music that I really enjoy listening to, a lot of which is kind of Japanese jazz fusion. Like Tatsuro Yamashita and stuff, Masayoshi Takanaka, and lots of Japanese ambient stuff too. I like sort of the approach to music that's just coming from a slightly different place to Western approaches. And very often it's not, but very often it is. It's really just in terms of chord progressions and how stuff's built. That's very interesting. Um, but aside from that, video games are a huge influence, and obviously so many of them come from Japan. And something I mentioned before is that I really like finding niche little worlds and diving into them. And something that Japanese video games are great at doing. I mean, all video games do this to some degree. It's a niche interest, but it's also a very mainstream interest with niches within it. There's lots of Japanese exclusive games that never sort of see releases over here on Western shores, and they can sometimes be a lot more strange and involved and catered to very particular interests. And catering to very particular interests is just really what I'm interested in. So I've never been like a train guy in general, but I started getting into Japanese sort of train simulators and stuff, purely because I just figured this is this whole world, and it goes hand in hand with the jazz fusion stuff. I quickly learned a lot of the Japanese train games that I play have these amazing, like riotous jazz fusion scores, which kind of almost seems at odds with sort of the tranquility of riding on a train. And even to go beyond that, in Japan, I found out that anyone who's been to Japan will know this, I'm sure, that every single train station, or almost every train station in Japan, has its kind of built-in jingles for each station. So there's a theme that will play when you arrive at the station, and another theme that will play when you depart from the station. And they're just really cute little melodies, and they're almost all written by a gentleman called Minoru Makaya, I believe his name is, a former keyboard player of jazz fusion legends Cassiopeia. So he's written these hundreds of sometimes very cute, sometimes very strange jingles for all these stations. And this, I mean, when I found out about this whole sort of train world became even more interesting to me. And I started sort of collecting sort of the various sort of train peripherals and stuff, these sort of levers and knobs and controllers, which again, never see a release over here. But in Japan, they're huge, you know. So I've got a few of them here. I'll reach down and show you a couple in a second. Of these sort of various different controls with levers and switches and stuff. Let me see if I can grab one. I'll show you. Hey, sorry to keep you waiting there. So here we go. This is one of the controllers here for a game called Densha to Go. And we have sort of a brake controller here and a throttle controller.
Intricate.
It is intricate. Like it's kind of a kid's toy, but also something that's resolutely not. There's even a space to hold your train driver's stopwatch in there as well, which my dad got me, and I love the bits. I have loads of these all over the house. These different kind of train controllers, and they're just great fun. Just both to play the game, but also just to look at and to have and enjoy. So I ended up making an album about that because that was something I got obsessed with. I decided to make a sort of train themed album. Even though my interest is less, I like the trains themselves. I love train rides. I don't know much about the technicalities of engine specifics and things like that and different names for trains. So I applaud anybody who does. I think it's an amazingly interesting thing to get into. But it's more the ephemera around it that I really enjoy. I even treated myself to Japan Railways official hat, which I plucked off eBay as well. I mean, I would like to pretend that I bought this just for doing promo shots and stuff. I bought it just because I wanted a fun hat. You know, I also bought some white gloves, which I wear when I'm using the controllers, as that's when Japanese train drivers and conductors use white gloves, partly to point at things so people can be aware of any hazards and things like that. So again, it comes back to that sort of world building, that full immersion that I really enjoy. So yeah, I mean, I know you'd ask me sort of why Japan, and that's sort of a roundabout way of getting to that. That it's kind of why anything for me. I get obsessed with so many things. It just happens that lots of those things come from Japan. Something that's always really important to me is kind of stressing cultural appreciation. I like cultural appreciation. I don't like cultural appropriation. I'm a white Belfast guy. I'm not a Japanese man. I'm not going to do a Gwen Stefani and try and pretend otherwise. So when I do get interested in these things, even when I make my albums, I take great care to always shout about where my influences are coming from and pointing people in the direction of things to listen to. Like the train game, it's called Densha to Go. People should play it. It's awesome. Like Cassiopeia and Minoru Makaya, the keyboardist. There's so many different worlds that people can get into, and if I can point people in any of those directions and have a bit of fun having them listen to my music at the same time, then everyone's a winner as far as I'm concerned.
Like that, there's a couple of things that you said which just like opened a box inside my head. So like obviously train stations having their own jingles and their own theme tunes makes the soundtrack to Pokemon makes so much sense.
Dude, completely. Yes, so many things made sense in my brain when I realized.
As soon as you said it, I was just like, that's why all the towns have their own theme music, and that's why all the buildings have their own theme music, because that's their lives.
That's exactly it. I mean, I think it's the 5 p.m. chimes in sort of, particularly maybe Japanese more rural villages and stuff. Is it 5 p.m. or maybe it's 6 p.m.? I could have the time wrong. But yeah, you're quite right. There's a little chime that plays, a jingle that plays. And I love that kind of idea of music being so, as you said, so much part of people's lives. Something I like is that a lot of Japanese ambient music is referred to as environmental music. At first, I thought that was, because there's lots of nature influence and stuff. But actually, I believe the real reason is that it's designed to be listened to in your home environment and to fill your environment, to fill your life with. I think that's a great approach to music, you know. Even when I was sort of a teenager, it would have been very rare for me not to be listening to music if
Mm.
possible. It's a great thing to fill your world with, whether that's music from any type of genre, any type of place, just as long as it's something you enjoy. I think that's great.
So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in the sense of not not necessarily getting obsessed with things, but it's is you that wasn't even a sentence. As you kind of like discover things, things become kind of like a Pandora's box of just every potential thing, especially when it's from like you saying other cultures, other countries. It's something I've found moving out here is just small things fascinate me. Just anything,
Yeah, that's a
anything which
great
I
way to
see
be.
like signs, and I'm just like, oh, I've never seen a sign like that before, or why would they need this sign specifically? And then you watch the world around you, and you suddenly go, oh, wait, now it
It
makes
makes
sense. Now
sense.
I understand
Yeah.
it, and I've understood every other film I've seen with this sign in, and just completely blanked it to begin with because it's just nothing. It's just like a background piece of information, and you just gathering it, you know,
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I
harvesting.
love that. I love that when a piece of background noise becomes, as you say, just something that makes sense and other bits start to fall into place. That's a real nice thing. Yeah, I feel like we're cut from the same cloth in that regard.
I mean, as much as you said, it's train games as well. I do feel like train games they're a weird niche, but a niche in the sense of this that everyone weirdly secretly enjoys them, right?
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
think so,
everyone does. like,
dude.
the amount of people I've
I
met who have
completely
played
agree.
Train Simulator is just is sky high.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. It's one of those things that historically might have been seen as like a nerdy thing, but even that itself has its own kind of mystique and arcane appeal. You mentioned Train Simulator there. The Train Simulator game series of games is also one of the producers is Nori Mikaya, who wrote the jingles and stuff as well. But yeah, I think you're quite right that it's one of those things people secretly love. I mean, people love those videos of I can't remember the dude's name, but there's a YouTuber who gets very excited about trains, and it's very sweet and very lovely. Um, and it's nice that people seem to like that. I rarely see anybody taking the piss. People are happy for this guy enjoying the stuff and probably secretly wanting to know a bit more about the cool trains.
Yeah, I think as well when you see stuff like that, there's a level of watching someone be so satisfied is just extremely comforting in a video. Like it's when you see someone open something up and they're just really happy about it, and you're like, I know nothing about what I'm watching, but this person seems to be having a good life, and I'm okay with that. Like,
That is exactly it. There's so much joy to be had in that in seeing people kind of get excited about whatever they're as long as they're in something that's not harming anybody. Like it's great. It's absolutely awesome to see. Um, I don't know if how well placed I am to give advice to people, but if anyone ever asks me for advice in terms of if not making music, like releasing music, how to go about that and how to have people listen to it, I never really know what to say other than just get as excited about it as possible, and hopefully other people will see you being excited and realize that there's something there to be excited about. And I think it's a very natural thing to do. I think it's a natural thing to get excited about the stuff you love. I think it's very natural, as you just said, for people to kind of feed off that and enjoy that because it's a wonderful thing. It's nice to have cool stuff to enjoy.
it's some cool stuff to enjoy in life, right? We're all doomed, so we gotta have like a little bit
Yeah, exactly. You,
of
you
cool
gotta have
stuff to
something.
enjoy.
Oh,
Is that kind of?
with that in mind, what kind of cool stuff do you enjoy? I'd love to know more.
I mean, actually, I feel like this is one of those like loaded questions of where I always want to. I recently went through kind of a process of just like obviously meeting a bunch of new people. Move to a new country, meet new people, and they sit you down, and the first thing they ask you is like, "So what are you into?"
Mm.
And to me, that's a huge
It's
world
huge.
expanding question,
Exactly.
right? That's too
It's
big.
the broadest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they just go, "Oh, what kind of music are you into?" I feel like it's too big a question because there's a sheer part of me which is just sat there going, if I say whatever I say is their impression of me for the rest of this time. So if I say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm into rock" or "I'm into metal," it's like impression made, and that's I'm stuck with that now. Even though in
Yeah.
reality, I listen to a lot of different music.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
and it's the same with everything I've kind of come across, like games, films, or anything like that. Whatever you mention in that first 10 minutes is how they're going to remember you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
You're totally right.
I like a bit of everything. Is what I tend to say. Like,
Well, you know,
I have
I think
no.
that's I think that's the most honest and best answer. You know, I don't think that's like a brush off or anything. I think that's a good way to be is being open minded and having a vast array of interests. That makes for an interesting person in my humble opinion. I am it, Joe. Is that the right thing? I think it is.
I mean, I have I can counter it. I figured out a counter question because
Oh
obviously
wow,
it's a bit of
okay,
a
right, yeah.
brush off, and I've had a couple of people who have asked me one thing, and I've said, oh yeah, I like everything. I'm a bit of a, like I wouldn't call myself a Renaissance man or anything like that. I just like to absorb everything which I come across and decide whether I like it or not. I'm not going to turn anything down. And then they'll ask me again, and I'll say much the same thing, and like, oh, I'm bored of hearing that. So now give me details.
Yeah.
My turnaround question is, okay, so if we accept that everyone likes a lot of things and we all enjoy a lot of things, what do you dislike?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
what don't you enjoy? What do instantly turns you off? Can't really be around. And I think that's the easiest way to get rid of that.
Yeah, I mean
Which I'll
that's
pose it
sure
to
to
you as a
some
question
people.
here.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think to answer feels like a brush off too is what I don't like is the opposite. I don't like closed mindedness. You know, I don't like carelessness. I don't like closed mindedness. I don't like people who aren't open to new experiences, new ideas, new cultures. That's one of the few things I don't like. I find. I mean, I am. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like. I try not to be like a sort of. I mean, you hear a lot about toxic positivity and stuff. I think there's an element of substance to that. A lot of the time, I'm a very grumpy, anxious, stressed man. So where I do find positivity is in finding the joy in loads of stuff. It's hard for me to find things that I truly dislike. There's not many. I'm sort of thinking there of kind of like sort of like plasticky kind of bro country music and stuff, that overly produced, overly polished stuff. Even that, there's a small part of me that kind of likes that. It's real tough. I'll think of something that I truly despise. By the end of this, I'm sure I'll work hard in the back of my brain. There's not
I
much.
mean, I can give
I'll
you
get
my
something.
go-to answer.
Oh, please do. Yeah, I'll
My,
steal it.
so my go-to answer is generally anything involving sport. Right.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
anything involving sport, just my brain just goes blank of like, this isn't for me. I'm not going to be interested in this. It's instantly rejected. But even like you say, there's there's little parts of it where I'm like, well,
Yeah,
that's
there's something
interesting, and it's
here.
usually around the fans. Like, it's not
Yeah,
the
it
actual
is
sport itself.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, 100%. There's always sort of worlds around it, and the fact that other people are interested makes me interested. I mean, I did a whole golf themed album called 19th Hole, and it gets very silly, and it's about body behavior at the golf club and stuff. Uh, I have never played golf apart from one experience at a driving range where I like wrecked my friend's dad's club. It's not a euphemism. Um, uh, but I joined a golf club as a social member. There's a golf club near me. There's not a lot of good bars near me for me and my friend who lives near across the road to go and have a drink in. So we came up with this idea of joining this golf club, not to play golf, but just to hang out there and stuff. Uh, and it's great. There's the kind of there's always there's like the rich mahogany, there's the crests, there's the kind of the weird rooms you're not really allowed to go into unless you're at a certain social standing. And there's elements of that I really don't like. I brought my wife there, and they frowned upon us sitting in the kind of the area where it was meant to be just men and stuff. That's shitty, obviously. But the fact that this world is there and populated by people who are so into it, that alone is interesting to me and makes it worthwhile. I love golf video games as well. Similarly to train stuff. I play a lot of golf games and I enjoy them. And I do think maybe I will try playing golf someday. But I would be the same that sport wouldn't be big for me. Um, yeah, sport's a good one. But as you say, there's even that there's something there in almost all sports. I think. Yeah,
The bit which always gets me is sports tattoos. Of when I
yeah,
see
yeah,
fan and team tattoos, I'm always just like, this is you really committed your life to,
yeah,
you
yeah.
went
That
out, you
that's
got
full
inked with
dedication.
that team. And I don't know how you got into that team because a lot of the time people are into the teams which are from their hometown.
Yeah,
Like,
it's really strange. I mean, that's something that's sort of particularly well, maybe it's not particularly sort of Ireland, UK, but it always seems strange to me that growing up, people would be into like football, soccer, and from Belfast, but obviously they'd be supporting Premier League teams like Liverpool, Manchester United. Like, how do you pick? There's what ties you to that, and that alone again is interested. I couldn't really give a shit about watching people kick a ball around, but I certainly would like. I enjoy that people are interested in it. I think that's why I don't mind watching sports in a bar, because that's a whole thing. Then it's an event and people are there. I get to kind of learn a bit about why people find it exciting, even if I'm still at the end of 90 minutes and 5 pints. I'm not really into it. Something's happened. A thing has happened, and I like that.
You get to just vibe with everything going on around them.
100%, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned kind of golf games and train games that kind of been in the same sort of vein of just trying to kind of start thinking of them as like they're very therapeutic games. Like
They
it's very
100% are.
methodical. Like there's no rush. Take time with it,
I,
And
you're completely right. Yeah, especially golf games, fishing games to some degree too. I think are like that as well. I like that. You're quite right. Weirdly, actually, the train game that I like the best into to go, it's kind of as arcadey as you get. The main thing of that game is following a bunch of rules, going the route and stuff. But the main thing is stopping the train at the exact precise bit. And there's this weird kind of after having a fairly relaxed train ride and hearing the kind of the jingles and stuff being played and the announcements on the train, it's very relaxed and you almost feel like you're on holiday riding a train. And then there's this little bit of arcade intensity at the end injected in. And I like that. I like that about golf games too and fishing games, that it's so chill and so therapeutic, as you say. So it means that when there's that little bit of intensity, it's very piquant. Then it hits even harder.
it's all I don't know. I always feel like it's almost like an anti-game at some point because obviously
Yeah,
games were
yeah,
meant to be exciting. Games were meant to be like something fun you get involved with. There's a challenge involved, even like original like Pong, like all the original
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
There was
exactly.
competition, and then someone came on and went, you know what? If I
Yeah,
just
that's
sit
the
here for 8 hours,
yeah.
like this would be
It's funny
great.
you should say the game that I'm playing at the minute, and even using the word playing, I don't know how appropriate it is. Basically, I've got a newborn baby. He's like 5 weeks old today,
Mhm.
actually. So playing games at the minute, there's not a whole lot of time for it. But what I have been enjoying are visual novels. That I've got like a Steam Deck and stuff. Right here, actually, my little guy. And it's brilliant because I can sort of, if I'm awake at weird times of night, which I often am at the minute, I can read visual novels on it. And that's a genre, again, that is sort of historically bigger in kind of, not just Japan, but Asian countries in general. And they have that same kind of feeling of being almost anti-games because you're effectively reading a book. And
Yeah.
some of them have sort of, you can make choices in them which will impact how the game goes, and you'll get a selection of different endings, maybe ultimately building towards a good ending. The one I'm enjoying at the minute is called Higurashi When They Cry. It's a kind of it's sort of it's a story about friendship. It's also kind of a horror game and this sort of weird slice of rural Japanese life and stuff. But there's no choices in it. There's no decisions to be made. It's just reading a book. Um, um, I felt confused because at the start of each chapter, the maker, what's his name? I wrote it down earlier on because I wanted to mention him. Ryukishi7 is the creator. At the start of each chapter, he mentions a difficulty. I just kind of think, oh shit, well, how can there be a difficulty when you're just reading? And he rates the difficulty on, effectively, it's a mystery novel, so he rates the difficulty on how easy or hard it is to work out what's actually going on or how it'll end up. I really like that. Adding an element of kind of play and gamishness to something that's historically not. That kind of got me thinking about books in that kind of capacity.
Hmm.
Like will I start thinking about uh, I can't even think of a good example now. Like a Philip K. Dick book, is that going to be sort of, is that a game that's difficult or hard? It's a strange way to approach a medium that I never thought about before. And it's one that
That's
kind of I think I'll
interesting.
rattle around the back of my mind for a while.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things there. So it's just like obviously when we're kids, they give us books at reading levels to say
Yeah,
this is your comprehension skill of what you're
that's
going
a
to
really
read.
good
But
point. Yeah,
we stopped doing that as adults for some
yeah,
reason.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
I've tried to sit down and read Lord of the Rings, and I'll be honest, I can't do it. Like the first few pages just throw me off, and then I get
It's
lost.
tough,
But I
man.
can read
It's
an
dense.
adult book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would be the same. I would be exactly the same. And Lord of the Rings is a great shout because I don't think I've ever finished it. I might got like halfway through The Hobbit, maybe like I'm like a while ago. I think I was when I was like 12 or 13. But I know that my experience when I'm a grown man won't be any different. You know, I don't think. You know, um, yeah, but yeah, you're quite right that there's kind of difficulty levels associated with books when you're younger. I wonder when that stops. Is that when you're maybe about 12 or 13? I don't
It
really
must be
know.
when you're like kind of teenage age, and maybe
Yeah, I
I
guess
mean, I
so.
guess they stop. Well, I guess I mean, I don't know, because then you start like English language classes where you have to describe or explain what you just read,
Yeah,
but there's no. But then that's weird because you go from like learning to read and comprehension levels to then
yeah,
Shakespeare.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And they
Yeah.
just like throw you another language and all the
I mean,
metaphors in the world.
like, I guess it could be. I mean, I guess there's an element of maybe being patronizing if you're, telling like a 16-year-old or a full adult, this book is an easy book or this is a difficult book. But I don't
Yeah.
think there should be any shame in that. I certainly don't think there's any shame in reading an easy book. Like most of the
I think
literature I enjoy probably would be described as being easy, and that's great. Yeah, easy stuff's nice. Yeah, like a lot of the time,
I,
again to bring it back to games, I play a lot of games on easy because I'm a bit shit at games. I want to have a good time, So there's nothing wrong with that.
whenever it brings up the menu screen, it's like, what difficulty do you want? And it's like, oh, it's for the real challenge. And I'm like, I'm not here for a challenge, guys. I'm
Yeah,
here to
exactly.
get a small kick of dopamine for completing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think there are exceptions for me where I do like I like bullet hell like shoot 'em up type games, and I want that to
Mm,
be difficult. I want to beat
right.
top scores and stuff. But for 99% of the time I'm playing games, I mean, I just told you the game I'm playing now, I've sunk hundreds of hours in, is a book.
Mm,
Almost all the time I'm picking that easy level because it's exactly the same. I want to. If I'm playing a game like I really enjoy the Ryu Gotoku set of games, the Yakuza games. They're great. I want to feel like a powerful badass, So I want to play it easy and kick a dude at Tokyo Street or hit him in the bin and see him explode his money and get a dopamine hit for a bit. Yeah, why not?
I feel like mildly powerful just for a moment. Like,
Yeah,
I'd
just
never
for a
kick a
minute.
person
Yeah,
in real life, but just
yeah,
for a
yeah,
moment,
yeah,
I want to feel
exactly.
that
Just
kick.
one fictional person. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
You
there's
just
nothing wrong with that.
you just reminded
I
me of
like that.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, no, go ahead. No, I think I was done.
Uh,
I was picking a bit of
I was
fluff
just gonna
off my
say,
screen.
you just reminded me of I think there's a Dara O'Brien bit where he's talking about games and how it's the only media form which locks you out if you aren't good enough. Like you don't
Yeah,
get the next
yeah,
part of the level if you're not good enough. And he was saying, what if books did that? What if you were halfway through a book and the end of it you had to tick off a few questions, and it was like, no, you didn't understand that. Go back, go back and read it again.
yeah.
Come back when you comprehend it.
I think Yeah, you know what? I thought of something one thing I really dislike is talking in the cinema. I think if you're not that, I would implement in the cinema that if you're not invested in the film, they should cut you off like a game. Like, no, you're not doing it. You're not playing cinema right. Just get out. Try again tomorrow.
It's how far do you go with that? Because at some point it's like, all right, so if they introduced eye tracking software in the cinema and you missed something, the cinema recognizes that you weren't watching the screen at that point because you were too busy eating your popcorn or just trying to find your phone.
Yeah, that's good. Full what's the thing from Clockwork Orange? The Ludovico technique with the
Yeah,
some
yeah.
forced cinema watching. That's what I'm into.
We could have easy games and easy books, but cinema, no, 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 no.
Yeah, exactly. No messing around in the cinema. Yeah,
You
that's when I
paid
get
to be in the
serious.
darkened room with everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to pay attention. But no, I think it's interesting that we have these balances of media and how we engage with stuff. Because I mean, surely you obviously post quite a lot of stuff on Twitter and post a lot of stuff online, and I'm guessing the reactions you get are mixed in terms of
um,
what you put out.
yeah, I mean it is. I mean, it's not like I have I don't have mega millions of followers or anything like that. So I'm very lucky in the sense that most of the people who are following what I do are doing that because they're into it, you know. I mean, I'm not such a delicate flower that I'm sure there are lots of people who've heard my music and think, nah, that's not for me. But that's totally fine, you know. Everyone has their likes and dislikes, as we were chatting about. Um, so I feel really lucky in that. Uh, you know, social media, I guess, is a blessing and a curse, especially, you know, this week when it feels like there's a million billion different platforms to contend with and stuff. Um, I have mixed feelings on sort of Twitter and social media in general as an entity, but in terms of the people that kind of I interact with on there, I have nothing but great things to say, which is really nice, you know. That's something that I don't expect anyone to sort of think everything I do is really good or whatever, especially because I do lots of different genres and stuff. I kind of sometimes feel sorry for people who have maybe, you know, heard like an ambient record I've put out and they've got sort of interest in and invested in it. And then I'm doing like you know, a metal song about being a cowboy. They're just thinking, right, I didn't sign up for this. And again, that's totally fine. You know, I never begrudge anyone kind of clicking the unfollow button or whatever. But I think that means that the people who do sort of stick around and continue to check out what I do, um, I think they want to see what will happen next. You know, and that's quite nice for me. A lot of the time, people will suggest like genres to me and stuff. You know, it was actually I mentioned joining the golf club and stuff, and that's where the golf album came from. It was a friend of mine, Nikolai, on Twitter, who said, you know, why don't you do a golf album? And that idea came from him, you know. And again, it's really important for me to mention people who mention that and stuff. You know, I mentioned I've got a kid, and a couple of people have messaged saying, "Hey, are you going to do like an album of lullabies or something?" I'm already thinking, well, maybe I will do an album of lullabies. So that so having that kind of interaction, I only ever do stuff if I want to do it. You know, I'm not going to. If somebody says, you know, why don't you do a blues album? I don't want to do a blues album. I'm not going to sort of think, oh, I better do that now. But if somebody thinks of an idea and sends it to me and it resonates a bit, and something comes with it, that's awesome, and it feels, I guess, more involved and interactive and stuff. You know, I have an emphasis on Bandcamp for that reason because it feels like there's an element of community and stuff there as opposed to just Spotify where people might hear your music kind of accidentally. And there are many reasons I like Bandcamp better, but a huge one is that kind of community aspect, being able to talk to the people who dig what I do, and for me to be able to thank them effectively and say, "Listen, I see you out there checking out my stuff. I really appreciate it. That's really nice. That means a lot to me." So I guess that informs a lot of the kind of the discussions I have online. Is that approach, and it's something that holds me in good stead so far. You know, but hey, who knows what tomorrow will bring? Who knows what new platform will be out there and who'll be on it and what happens? But certainly, all my online pals, my little um, friends in my pocket. You know, I get annoyed people saying that. You know, their phones full of friends in their pocket. They're just real people. They're my friends in real life. You know, so yeah,
Yes,
that's cool.
exist somewhere. You know, they have
Yeah,
lives
exactly. Yeah,
outside of
yeah,
that little phone. They
yeah.
sit waiting for you. I think that's the best approach to it, though. I mean, I'm kind of like you in the same sense of I I do what takes me. You know, whatever the whim takes me is what I'm going to create because I want to make things which I enjoy first, and then I want to share those things which I enjoy with other people. And I think,
Exactly.
like you say, I think a lot of people, especially if they do become, you know, viral or they get big, end up a bit trapped because if they change what they're doing, like you say, someone might click away and they might change, you know, they're like, oh, I'm no longer interested in this.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think it's a weird, like, fine line you have to walk, I guess, sometimes for some people.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know, again, part of it comes down to me being really fickle. I can never just do the same thing over and over again. There are people. I'm not saying there are musicians who are doing the same thing over and over again, but certainly they're staying within a genre they like, and that is totally cool and totally great. You know, if they enjoy doing that, awesome. That's really good. They find the thing they love. But I just like yourself. I couldn't do it. I like that freedom to have a bit of movement, and that's part of the reason I really thought I think this podcast is really cool because you're involving different people. It's never staying in one place. You know, you're learning things and you're helping other people learn about different experiences and stuff. And again, to me, that's where the meat is. That's where you're catching the big fish.
You got to fish in the deeper waters to, you know, see what's going on out there. Why not? We mentioned it like a couple of kind of a bit there where we were obviously you use quite niche samples and you use like niche inspirations, and you mentioned the idea of like something just taking you or an idea just taking you. I was talking recently to another guest, Dave Zakin, who's a ceramicist who lives out in Brooklyn, and he does what he called like dysfunctional ceramics in the sense of they make odd characters and shapes, but he tends to write slogans into the ceramics which are creepy or surprising or anything
Yeah.
like that. And I was saying how a lot of the work which I make tends to come from like one liners, like one lyric, one liners. And I was wondering if it was kind of the same for you, but maybe in terms of like you hear like an audio note or you hear something where you're like, oh, that could be something.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, the train jingles is a really good example of that because that's
Mm.
a very the instrumentation is always very similar with them, or usually is. And some of them will just sound like a ring telephone or whatever, but a lot of the time it's kind of jingly keyboard, sort of DX7 type stuff. And from that little seed, you can get something big. Um, and ceramics is actually a really good jumping off point for that. I used to work sort of I studied film and I sort of did freelance filmmaking for a while. I once made a documentary about a ceramicist. A ceramicist, the right word to know to make the documentary. A ceramics dude here, and his whole deal was he made teapots. He didn't really like calling them teapots. He called them spouted pouring vessels, because again, for him, they didn't really look like teapots most of the time. He
Right.
said as long as they were, he never really used them as teapots, but as long as they functioned, that was his hook. That was his one line. That was his seed. And from that, he was able to sort of see how far he can push that and bend it and stretch it. Quite literally with the stuff. It's all obviously very physical and tangible. His name's Peter Meadley. If you want to look him up, he's really good. Uh, and yeah, again, I like that approach. Where you're taking a small idea and then just seeing just how far you can twist it and bend it and have fun with it. So 100%, yeah, a lot of my musical approach, and again, my approach to most stuff would come from that. We're just taking that small idea, that maybe it is something I've heard. Like I all the music I do is entirely made from the ground up by myself. From like just from like again a blank page or whatever. I know I get sort of there's a bit of overlap between the sound of what I do with like vaporwave and stuff, which is obviously built very heavily on samples and stuff again, which is great and everything. With my music, it's from the it's just all played basically by me on various synthesizers and stuff. Um, but what I do find interesting is being inspired by like old TV commercials and stuff like that, because that's something that well, I don't use elements of that in my music. What I love doing is watching like old, especially slightly surreal commercials from 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, and even more modern ones, because it feels like a real sort of snapshot of a particular time in a way that's often a lot more surreal than just sort of sitcoms would be or TV programs at the time. So I'll watch something like that and maybe try and write some music to fit that, and then maybe I'll sort of make a video from it where I'll cut together some bits from the commercial with the music, and stick it on Twitter and stuff. So well, I don't really do musical sampling. I guess I would do video sampling if that's a thing.
Mm.
So again, like loads of inspiration comes from that. And sometimes I'll write songs where I've written it sort of as a soundtrack to a commercial or something, and no one will ever see the commercial, but I'll know in my head that that's my own little soundtrack to that, and sometimes sort of the name will come from. Or yeah, so definitely there are things and places and people out there that'll inspire me to sort of plant the seed and do whatever you do with the seed, water it, grow it, stuff like that. I'm not a good gardener. I like plants,
Cultivate
but
it.
I'm
Yeah.
not good at them. Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting though. I was having this thought kind of the other day of because obviously a lot of conversation comes up a lot nowadays of how things are just repeating, or creators are always taking inspiration from other creators, and obviously AI, that's a whole other minefield of things which can be discussed one day. But I was thinking of what moves art genres and what moves music genres along tends to be someone kind of stepping out the lane, tends to be moving on. But I find within our generation at least, and this whole generation, is a lot of modernized now do take things from pop culture. We do take things from the things around us, and we use those as jumping off points. And I was trying to think if that was whether it was bad or good, but at the same time was conflicted, because I was kept thinking about Renaissance painters and how a lot of their imagery was just taken from the Bible, and they were using the biggest piece of pop culture they had,
Yeah,
which was
exactly. Yeah.
biblical imagery, and moving it along. And I was thinking, when you get these critics who come along and say, "Oh, well, you just ripped off this, or you're looking old, whatever." I'm like, well, yeah, but everyone. That's
Yeah,
every
everyone
art
does.
movement ever. That you take what you say, like you say, you're inspired by what was surreal about the thing that you were seeing and what was interesting about the thing you were seeing, and then placing that within your structure of creating things. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know
I
if
think you're right. It's kind of like a
yeah,
sliding scale, isn't it? I mean, you never want to completely rip someone off, but paying homage is great, and just it's where you find that line that sits right with you, whether it's something you're making or something you're enjoying. And you're totally right. It's the oldest game in the world. Nearly everyone does it. You're if you're going to make something, you'll be inspired by the stuff you consume. It's only natural and it's good. That's a good thing. Again, it comes back to me to for me the idea of kind of less appropriating, more appreciating. So if you do something that's inspired by somebody, do your best not to rip it off. Try and do something new that's maybe sure takes elements from it in some sense. It's always good to be as original as humanly possible, but it's also great to start out where your inspiration comes from. And if you've made something new and you haven't completely ripped it off, then you're free to do it. If you've done something not very nice, like completely ripped somebody else's work, then you don't get the joy of saying this is where my inspiration comes from. If you made something new, then you can go, oh well, I like that, and maybe I was inspired a bit by that or this, the other, and people can find out more. So it's an it, weirdly being inspired, I think, gives you the freedom to make something new and to talk about it. It's not like is it two sides of a same coin, or is it both the sides of the same coin? There's a coin involved, there's sides involved, but there's a way to do things that you can have your cake and eat it too, as long as you're making something new and good.
I think your work definitely it taps into that, especially. I mean, at least for me, as because obviously everything's subjective to what you consume with the world. Obviously, people connect it in different ways. But I think what I found was that, like you're saying about, there's the surreal nature to the old things you're seeing, and whenever I see older things, my brain instantly clicks into, but this was normal at some point. Like this,
Yeah, yeah,
this was. It's like when you watch old '80s new music videos. I love them because at some point this was considered standard, and we kind of moved along from that, and then obviously film and cinema developed and techniques developed, and what we have right now is considered normal. Like that's considered the everyday, but in 20 years it'll be considered surreal because people look back and be like, why was this ever a thing,
exactly.
and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
your stuff tapped into that for me, because I was just like, yeah, I'm seeing this stuff, and it's almost like the idea of creation becomes just like trying to break into someone's like own history and past and say something new about what they've already seen for it to make it enjoyable for every day.
yeah. I could not have humanly put that better myself. I mean, I completely agree. It's a great approach, and it's endlessly fascinating, as you said, to think about how things we treat as normal now will be very strange in 20 years. Which is great. That's nice. I like living in weird times, just as long as they're not weird in a terribly shit way. But it's
Yeah.
weird good times.
There's
I'm
a
I'm down
limit
with.
to weird.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a cutoff point. It's like the books again. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
some point, we're going to have to sit back and review times and be like, no, you know what? We went too far. We went too
Yeah,
weird
too
with it.
far. Yeah, cut it back.
We were
Yeah, get out of the
just
cinema.
yeah, step out.
Yeah,
We'll go do something, lovable and nostalgic again. We'll
yeah,
step back 5
exactly. Yeah,
years. Like,
yeah, yeah,
like that.
completely.
We can apply creation process to the entirety of society. Just yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
we're
how it
all
should be.
yeah, sample everything, and then when we feel like we've done it too much, which we're almost
Yeah,
at that point.
we'll
Like
know. We'll know.
yeah, so someone will come out. There'll be a report. It'll
Yeah,
come out, and
exactly. Yeah,
we'll know.
yeah.
A weird segue is that I watched an article this morning from, I can't remember, it was like the New York Times or whatever it was, and it was basically just a declaration that we failed as
Yeah, just in
everything.
general,
They
everything.
they
Yeah.
they wrote this report, and it was basically just along the lines of, so everything we thought about capitalism, society, for the last 20, 30 years was incorrect. And here's the
Yeah.
breakdown of how it's incorrect. And it ended really ominously, because the article ended with, we don't really know what the future of it will look like, but what we can say is that currently it's wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong.
That's just
Definitely
like,
on the wrong path.
what do I do with the
you know,
rest of
there,
my
there,
day now?
there's a lot of joy to be had in sort of bleak stuff when it comes to media, but less so when it comes to real life. You know?
It's because it's controlled. When it's media, we're putting ourselves in that situation. When it's
Yeah,
the real world,
exactly.
we have no control
Yeah,
over
we're
it.
living it. Yeah.
This would be a weird point to end the podcast on. Like,
Oh, a nice bleak ending. Yeah, that sounds fun. No, what time? Well, I think I got a bit of time left.
we got 10 minutes. I just wanted to
We
ask
got
you
10 minutes.
what kind of like what you're working on right now as well before you kind of move on.
Well, I mentioned earlier that recently my wife and I have had a kid, which is lovely. And a couple of people did say, "Oh, will you do like an album of lullabies and stuff?" And I've been having fun playing music for my little guy to try and get him to sleep and to calm my own brain down when it's tired and frenzied as it often is right now. So that's something I'd like to do. I think I probably will once I kind of I've recorded little snatches of music just for myself and for my family. But if I can collate those into something that's for other people too, um, that'll be great. That'll be really cool. I've always got like a couple of albums on the back burner, but because of this big life change, I haven't really been in my studio as much. Um, but I've always got stuff going on. But that's something I would like to do is like a baby album. I think people can expect that probably in the not too distant future. Once I get that settled, but 90% of what I'm working on at the moment, and what I have been working on for the past couple of years, is a couple of video game soundtracks, which I am 100% love them doing. I can't talk too much about them because of NDAs and stuff. Um, but they're just dream projects that I love in every capacity. And yeah, again, it taps into that whole thing of this is a whole world that I'm being entrusted to score. And I mentioned that I like sort of world building and stuff in general. The fact that I'm part of a team where people are building a world and I'm providing the sounds of that world, that's so exciting to me, and it's something that obviously it's lots of work, but it's something that I am continually fired up about, and I'm working with brilliant people doing absolutely, frankly, incredible things, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So that we'll probably see a trailer for one of them this year, maybe. Yeah, so that's the main thing is some game soundtracks. But apart from that, just making my own music for myself and the cool people who want to enjoy it. But yeah, there'll be some baby stuff soon. And the baby stuff, I have recorded a few actually already. Well, I say a few. I think I've recorded 26 and a half baby themed songs.
A
Uh,
few.
some some of them are kind of lullabies, some of them are kind of more jazz leaning, some of them are like metal tracks. There's some kind of more anime scented jazz fusion in there. And I mentioned I might kind of try and collate those in something coherent. But I kind of like that it's even I mentioned I jump around genres a lot. This is kind of bounces around a lot. But I feel like it's a little snapshot of where my head's been at for the past month. Um, and maybe that might be nice just to kind of not mess with it too much and let people into my brain for a bit. And maybe if it makes people have a cool cozy time in their jammies too. It's not just for babies; it's suitable for ages not to infinity. So yeah, I think that's something that's on the horizon. Baby music, couple of video games, trying to survive and get some sleep. That's my life right now.
I think that's not a bad way to approach it, and a bad kind of point to round this out on is creation helps deal with life. It helps you
It does.
cope with what's going on, and again, like you're saying, you're world building, but you're world building in your own world, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I can't ignore the therapeutic element of that. I mean, even if I wasn't making music to release or to commission stuff or whatever, I'd still make music anyway because it's therapeutic and it's lovely. And what a great way to spend time creating a thing that I think it's great for anyone to create anything, whether with any goal in mind, whether that's for themselves as a hobby, whether it's for a job, whether it's for a bit of both, which is what mine kind of probably falls into. It's a great thing. It's a great catch-all, and that can translate to anything creative. So yeah, as you said, therapeutic, lovely, all the best, all the best stuff to do.
I just got one more question for you before we
Oh,
fully round
no
up,
probs.
which I'm asking to every guest at the minute is who should I speak to next?
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing question. My head instantly goes towards other musicians and stuff. If we're talking music, there's so many sort of contemporaries of mine that I love. There's a dude called Cat Kemper. His real name is Mike Langley. And he is a dude who releases kind of almost exclusively cat-themed music, and lots of it is done on kind of junky 80s Casio synthesizers and stuff. But aside from that, he's also a tremendously interesting dude who has lived making music all his life. He's done a Razorhead themed David Lynch style projects. He has done albums created entirely on toys. I think he is the dude who founded the subgenre Toytronica. So an endlessly lovely, fascinating, inspirational dude, Mike Langley. If I have more ideas, I will email them to you. But he's the first dude that comes to mind because he's a dude that I always love hearing talking about stuff. I would love to hear you two peer into each other's brains. That sounds amazing to me.
You can always try and chat it out. That's all we can do. We can sit down and discuss.
Hey,
I'll try and sit down.
I'll send you his email address. I'm sure that's not a breach of GDPR. I'm sure he won't mind me furnishing you with his details.
I'll just CC you on it, and if it
yeah,
goes wrong,
do
I'm
that.
like, Peter's to blame.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take the hit. No, that sounds,
it's been lovely
that sounds
to catch
amazing.
up with you.
Dude, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to anyone checking this out. It's been a true pleasure. I've enjoyed this so much, so very much.
Fantastic, and that's all we can hope for on any of these. And we will catch up with these guys later then. Thanks very much, Peter.
Cheers.